The festivities and choreography will be something like this. We're going to see an 8-minute video. Then I have the great honor of introducing Bill to you. Then Bill is going to bring a whole host of his retinue up here and talk to you for a little while. Then you're going to get to ask questions. So let's start with the video.
Social entrepreneur sees a new opportunity, figures it out, and then they start introducing it at the local level. That upsets the existing arrangements. It undermines the idea that things don't change. It's like plowing the earth.
To identify extraordinary natural leaders who are emerging worldwide, Ashoka has built a rigorous 5-step selection process, a process that in itself helps candidates hone their organizational vision. As Lee Hamilton said, Ashoka invented, refined, and globally implemented a highly rigorous adaptation of business venture capital methods that finds and helps launch the best new social entrepreneurs and their ideas and institutions. 60% of those it selects change national policy within 5 years.
What we're looking for first, and very simply put, is this idea, together with this person, going to change the pattern in their field, education, human rights, whatever, on a roughly continental scale?
Ashoka's real power is that it is a many-faceted community. It enables these ideas and change makers to weave together, to do far more together than they could alone. This community without borders is also building business society bridges that will have extraordinary impact. As community grows, change accelerates.
We are fighting against centuries-old problem. Hundreds of thousands of children are used as slave laborers. They were considered and treated worse than animals. I realized that somebody has to take initiative. Somebody has to speak out. Each time I went to rescue children, it was really challenging. It was hard. 2 of my colleagues were shot dead. I was attacked several times. But we have to go and keep on rescuing those children. Each time I bring a child to a mother back home, each time I feel more strong. We have freed tens of thousands of child-bonded laborers in past 20 years. I'm very confident that the slavery has to go in my lifetime.
Satyarthi created the Rugmark label that identifies a rug as child labor free. Rugmark's impact on the carpet industry and beyond is global. Now, consumer products from clothing to athletic equipment have similar labels, seen as a marketing advantage.
2 critical things about Ashoka. One is that Ashoka believes that leadership drives social change. And second, that leadership has power through networks.
After the fall of communism in Poland, many people found the free market difficult. They lost their homes, their livelihood, everything. I saw a solution in creating self-help homes, communities in which people help themselves. The state sold us this derelict house for a token sum. We call it barka, like the ark, but it carries the unwanted, those left behind, the homeless, the alcoholics, mental patients, whole families with nowhere to go. All who come are given work, in the kitchen, driving, building, on the farm. They all feel needed. We gave these people the will to live. Barca has 20 houses, 500 residents, and another 2,000 people come to us for work. My wife and I would like to export the idea of Barca across Europe, so more people can learn to help themselves.
From these beginnings, the Barca model has been adopted by the Polish government and has spread throughout Europe.
Most programs in justice are deficit-oriented. They focus on problems. We focus on strengths, strengths of families, strengths of government, and strengths of communities in which people live.
A woman came to me for a job, and I turned her away because she had a small child, and that started haunting me. I realized that these women need childcare facility to keep their job. So I started Fulki. Fulki is a Bengali word. It means spark, the spark of a new idea. My two sons gave me their first paycheck, and with that I started First Daycare Center. The best thing about this project is the employer is allowing their workers to come and breastfeed their children 2-3 times in a day. Childcare facilities reduce the absenteeism, they can retain their skilled worker, and migration is also declined. In government sector alone, 1.2 million women are working. Since Fulki started, we are providing childcare facilities to 18 factories. My dream is that all the 2,500 garments factory will have a daycare facility.
Government offices, the banking sector, hospitals, garment manufacturers and other citizen sector organizations are following Huck's model. Nike, Reebok, Levi's and Van Heusen are helping set the standard for overseas manufacturers.
Ashoka has such a broad network, not only of entrepreneurs, but also of people who support this approach to social change, that it offers us a tremendous opportunity in terms of getting the word out and building broader support for fair trade.
In 1993, I had a dream. I saw our poor youth using computers and find solutions for their problems through the computers. People said, Rodrigo, you are crazy, because poor people have the mind of poor people and they never can use the computers. I started an organization called CDI, Committee for Democracy Information Technology. I created the first school inside the favela in a ghetto in Rio de Janeiro. We have partnerships with companies and international foundations that give money, computers, and technical skills. We have 106 CDI schools in 17 Brazilian states. Over 50,000 poor youth learn information technology with us. Our goal is to include poor youth in the digital era. We show another way of life. They don't need crime. They find jobs and they change their behavior. CDI is my passion. Every day I realize my dream. I love my work.
Baggio developed partnerships with over 20 organizations, including Microsoft, AOL, IBM, and Unisys. His approach has been copied in 11 countries, changed 1.8 million lives, and it has been recommended by UNESCO as a model for other developing countries. Ashoka measures the entrepreneur's impact 5 years after their launch. Is the work continuing? Have other institutions copied the innovation? Have they changed national policy? As these people and their ideas succeed, they become role models, encouraging many others to care and to act. More importantly, as their innovations enter one local community after another, they break up old patterns and provide user-friendly new approaches. Nothing could be more conducive to the multiplication of local changemakers, whose successes in turn encourage more local changemakers. They change patterns that resisted change. They build enabling frameworks that support action by other citizens and entrepreneurs. Collaborating through Ashoka, these leading social entrepreneurs are creating a world where everyone will be a change maker.
This is one of those incredibly rare moments in history where there is a deep, profound change going on. And our job is to serve that. What a privilege.
Well, talking about what a privilege. My name is Larry Brilliant. I'm a Noogler, and I'm the new executive director of Google. I'm new here, but I'm an old guy. And I want to tell you that, especially for those of you who are so young, that when you try to do something huge like economic development or combat global poverty or stop the climate crisis, these are not cross-sectional nouns that occur over a short period of time. These are verbs that span a long duration of time. Bill's life in service spans a long duration of time. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about that. This is Wavy Gravy and Bill Drayton, and they met together doing a form of social service. It was the 60s form of social service about 35 years ago. And they're just re-meeting each other right now. So we're all having a lot of fun with that. You know, when I think about the social entrepreneurs that have inspired my generation the most, it's Martin Luther King, who was a social entrepreneur. And it's Mahatma Gandhi, who was a social entrepreneur and Martin Luther King's role model and part of the contagion of that virus. And Bill Drayton is inspired by, informed by, and is a student of Mahatma Gandhi. And he's a Gandhian. And it's, I can't tell you what a privilege and an honor it is for me to be introducing him. We've walked on many of the same paths of pilgrimage. Rabindranath Tagore, a Bengali poet, wrote a poem which said, "The great dawn which is for all, arise in the east. Let its light show us to each other who walk on the same path of pilgrimage." And I think there's many from my generation who look at what Bill has done as that verb, as that continuation of a promise that began when we were all young and idealistic and we thought we'd be able to change the world and make it better. But he's actually done it. He's walked with Vinoba, one of Mahatma Gandhi's disciples, who walked through Orissa. And from the power of his being, from the satyagraha, from the soul force that he was able to bring, he was able to go and meet rich landowners and show them that it was wrong for them to have so much when others had so little. And these rich landowners would surrender their villages and give them to the poor in a movement called Gramdan. And Bill actually saw that happened. That really happened. He walked with Jayaprakash Narayan in Bihar in the 1970s. I actually had the chance to walk with Jayaprakash Narayan in Bihar in the 70s. And Jayaprakash Narayan exhibited the same Gandhian ability to tell truth to power with so much humility and force that the powerful opened up in front of his armies of peasants and workers. And he changed India's history. And I think what Bill Drayton is doing and what Ashoka is doing is no less changing history than Vinod Bhave and Jayaprakash Narayan. And that's the context that I want you to see what he is doing and what these Ashoka fellowships mean, because he's being true to his teacher, to his lineage, and to the concepts that Gandhi enunciated. I'm so honored to introduce, therefore, Bill Drayton.
Larry didn't mention a few other things. We both, I think all three of us actually traveled to India overland to learn and to contribute. In their case, they were concerned that the response to the disasters in Pakistan and Bangladesh were not my ability to defeat all known technologies. If you're ever in danger from Hal, just ask me to come and I will short circuit him on the spot. So yes, we share a tremendous amount, and I think all of us in this room do. Everyone is here as a change maker for the good, and I think that's what unites the spirit of Google and the group of people at Google who would on this beautiful day choose to be here. We've all got that goal. And so my job in this sequence is to try and provide a little framework, and then you'll see three of my colleagues, and hopefully we'll have most of the time for conversation. History is really critical for understanding the opportunity we all have now. The agricultural revolution produced a very small surplus. It supported a few percent at most. Everyone else had to keep producing the barley for that few percent to move to Jericho or Pataliputra and begin civilization. We're way past the point where a few percent should be running everything, but they still are. And all our ultimate objectives, all of us in this room, is to get to the point, to break through where, in Ashoka's articulation of our core phrase, everyone is a change maker. Everyone knows that they can cause change and they can work with others to make that happen. And it's only when you know that you're a full citizen. We can't continue to exist in a fast-changing, complicated world where only 2 or 3% are able to provide answers and cause change. It just doesn't work. If you have a sense that the problems are outrunning the solutions, you're right. There's only one answer to that, and that's to increase the number of problem solvers. And that's, I think, what we all share in common. Now, we are at a moment in history where the breakthrough is right within our grasp. Gandhi, Tagore, King, all of these folks are partners in this same journey. We are privileged to be at the moment where the breakthrough really can come. And social entrepreneurs are not unique, but they're very, very critical key agents of this change. The 4 people you just saw on the video, they had a vision, they gave themselves permission to do it, and they've had a big impact. And even since the statistics of a year ago when we made this video, the numbers keep increasing and the impact. So we've said from the beginning, what is the most powerful force in the world? And it's, we think, we've said for years, it's a big idea but only if it's in the hands of a really good entrepreneur. It's that combination, idea and entrepreneur, and then the institution they build, that moves the world. And if you think about it, we've elected over 1,700 fellows at the beginning points of their career, and on average, varies from year to year, somewhere between 50 and 60% have already changed national policy. It's a very, very powerful group of people. Now, we've learned since then that there is something more powerful, and that's when you build a community of leading social entrepreneurs connected to everyone else as needed. And just let me give you, there are two levels that works at. One is simply working together. So if you're dealing with the trafficking in women and children in South and Southeast Asia, you can't do it alone. You know, women disappear from Nepal and they show up in Bombay or from Northeast Thailand, etc. You're dealing with folks who deal cross-nationally, sophisticated, complicated forces, and we need to have the 20 or so fellows who are working in that area closely connected. So just at a practical level, collaboration of that sort is really important. But then there's a deeper level of collaboration, which we have spent 10, 12 years now learning. And that is when you take 400 leading social entrepreneurs who've conceived a powerful idea that's changed policy, that's operating at a large scale, you have something much more powerful than the sum of those 400 ideas. Each of them is typically a human being, like one of the people in this room, gave themselves permission, they kept looking at a problem, they came up with an answer, and it was who they are and the skills and insights they brought. And that moment in time, they saw an opening that could make a big difference. But it's a partial answer. One principle, one delivery system, a couple of clients. When you have 400, you can see many principles, many delivery systems. Now, let me give you an example. There are 400 fellows who are primarily focused on children and young people. Now, one of the principles we've learned is that if young people don't master empathy, they are going to be marginalized in the modern world. And this world we live in, we have 25, 30% of the world's people marginalized, people who don't want to deal with them. Whole groups of people are marginalized. Now, what is the cause of that marginalization? There are multiple causes, but we've come to believe increasingly that the single most important cause is that whole groups, and therefore the individuals in them, have not mastered a very complicated skill, which is applied empathy. In 1900, 97% of the world's children were growing up in isolated, small, static, pretty static agricultural villages. And if they just learned the rules, if they did what their father did or their mother did, they'd be fine. They'd be accepted in society, they'd be functional. No more. Every day, all of us are in situations where the rules haven't been invented yet, where there's a conflict of rules. The manufacturing department and the sales department have different rules, let alone when you cross organizational or cultural lines. We have to, every day, constantly do this very complicated thing of understanding we're about to say something or do something. What's the impact going to be on all the people around us, several layers out and into the future, and adjust our behavior to be a good person? And if we can't do that, we're a walking time bomb and no one wants to deal with us, even if we know computers or Latin or whatever. Well, this is not a genetic skill. This is a learned social skill, and we've got a lot of humanity that isn't learning it. There are many fellows who figured out how to help children and young people master it, very simply. One Canadian fellow takes a 1-year-old infant plus mom, and in 8 hours has kids as young as possible. She has 1 hour a month over a school year. those kids are grasping it. Bullying rates go down and stay down. But the point of this is when you look at any issue area and you look at great social entrepreneurs and you try to find out what are the principles that they have discovered that the decision makers in that field, in this case people running schools or youth programs, if we can just get it to them, they'll say, boy, this is an idea we can run with. And then our job together is to market it, to make that happen, to flip the whole system. Now that is way more powerful than the sum of the 400 individuals together. And so there is something more powerful than a big idea in the hands of an entrepreneur. It's when we work together, when we entrepreneur together. And this is an area where I think the opportunities for working with Google in terms of helping people think together across geographies are enormous. This is something we're all just learning how to do. It's a key frontier in thinking together. Now, is there anything even more powerful than that, you might ask? And we think there actually is, and I've alluded to it already. And each of us has a great answer. And you'll hear from Karen in a minute as another concrete example. But all our answers have half-lives, and they're getting shorter and shorter and shorter. The faster the world changes, the shorter the useful life of any solution. The one thing that is bigger than that is everyone a change maker. If we can go from a few percent, and 10 years from now we have 15 to 20% of the world's people knowing that they can cause change, we have changed the world permanently forever. Those people are not going back. There's a ratchet effect here. Once people are powerful, they don't want to be an object again. Once they have those skills, they're not going to give them up. It's very contagious. And that's our opportunity. How can we make that breakthrough from a few percent to 20%, and the next generation 50 to 70%? And then just imagine the architecture of human society has changed permanently. We have what I think is sort of an electromechanical system at the moment, which is designed for a few people to control everyone who's passive. Imagine something, I apologize for my science here, but I think of something like the brain where you have synapses going in every direction all the time, always open to create new synapses, new patterns. Every single human being the equivalent of a really smart white blood cell. Not just going around destroying bad things, but building new things, the future. When someone sees something that's stuck, they say to themselves, what fun, I can go and deal with that. I know how to deal with that. Well, we live in a world where 97% of the world's people are afraid to see a problem, because if they see a problem, what are they going to do? They know they can't do anything about it, so that's an unhappy moment for them, so they avoid even seeing the problems. Once people love the idea of solving problems, and they know they can, we're going to see the problems faster and we're going to solve them faster, and that's a really different world. It's also a world that is much more likely to be fair. When you have a monopoly on initiative of 2 or 3%, not surprisingly, the resources and the power flows to the people who have that monopoly. And so I think we all have a huge opportunity to break that system and build something much, much better. And we can do it in many different ways. And I just suggest there's a long S-curve, a slow part where it builds up. We're now at the steep part of the S-curve where we can really break through. And if everyone in this room just gives themselves permission to know that you can be a change maker, the historical moment, there's just so much need for you to do that, then we can together help the change makers individually in portfolios by whatever subject matter or geography you're interested in. We can work on these mosaics together. Many people in this room have the ability to help people set up their technical system. But there's hundreds of ways we could work together. So now let me quickly introduce Karen, who is one of our first global fellows. As the field has globalized, we couldn't deal anymore only at the national level. Karen is American, living in Switzerland, working in China and Southeast Asia, and bringing, of all things, prison reform then. So Karen, why don't you explain this?
Hi, it's first of all, I want to say thank you all for being here. I already had one of those great drinks downstairs, so I'm completely energized by, what was that drink called? And we were told that we can bring one home of every single sample, so thank you very much. I also wanted to say that it is fantastic to be here for a number of different reasons. Just this place is fresh and innovative, and I'll also start with why it energizes me seeing all of you here in support of Ashoka Fellows and Innovators. You know, in China, as many of you know, there are some great new laws that have occurred, but many of the lawyers, especially lawyers working in legal aid and criminal law, have themselves become the embodiment of what they're fighting for. So in other words, they may stand up in court and say, my client has been tortured and that's against the law. And the next thing they know, at the end of the trial, a prosecutor or judge may point to them and say, you have obstructed justice, and order them handcuffed, bring them to jail, and beat them until they're bloody. Now, I started looking at this and thinking, wow, this is kind of a hard thing. What should we do? Well, one of the things that we do in China right now is we bring together these change makers, these social entrepreneurs who are criminal defense lawyers, into groups of 100, and they share their stories, work together, and also look at the laws. Many of them have at times said to us, you know, this is important, but what's also important is that we're able to come together as a community. So one poem, which I'd like to share with you, which we always read there, is this one. It is, take courage, friends. The road is often long, the stakes are very high, and the path is never clear. But deep down, there is another truth. You are not alone. And for me, they tell me, wow, we come together in trainings and it's medicine for the heart. And for me, when I come out and I see all these people here who are supporting the work of us, and in turn supporting the work of Chinese defenders, Cambodian defenders, and Vietnamese defenders, it gives me great hope, because I get to go home and say, hey, guess what? I saw a lot of people and they're really supporting your work, so go. Now, I also am very grateful to be here with Ashoka today, because Bill Drayton is one of the first people who told me, in fact, he was the first person, when I sat down with him and said, hey, this is what I'm thinking, who said to me, and I said to him, everyone thinks that I'm crazy. Am I crazy? Bill said, oh, no, you're not crazy. You're a social entrepreneur. So I'm, I guess, here in part, within 5 minutes, here to explain to you what the first crazy idea was and how it was inspired. It started first one day when I walked to a Cambodian prison, and I saw a 12-year-old boy who had been tortured, and he had been denied access to counsel. And at that moment, I looked and I thought to myself, I realized what an idiot I had been for a number of years. And that was because for all those years that I had been writing letters for political prisoners saying, you know, in protest of the government, throwing stones at the government saying, you know, stop it, let this political prisoner go, I would never have written a letter for this 12-year-old boy, because he wasn't a political prisoner. He hadn't done anything important for anybody. He was a 12-year-old boy who screwed up and had stolen a bicycle. So what I realized at that moment was that there was a tremendous opportunity, because in China, as in Vietnam and Cambodia and countries throughout the world, there are new laws that have recently been passed in the last decade that say you have a right to a lawyer, you have a right not to be tortured. The problem is in the implementation of the laws, number one. But number two, the irony of the situation is that many of these governments, including the Chinese government, Vietnamese government, and Cambodian government, don't have a problem with groups or organizations, individuals coming in to support the implementation of these laws. The problem is that there's a gap, but they're not being implemented, and most people are like, you know what? We're going to throw rocks right now, and that's an easy thing to do. And a lot of times, you know, I think it's work avoidance. It's hard to actually sit down and help people implement these things. It's just daily, hard grunge work. And so it's easier for us to turn our backs on these types of things that take work. So I realized at that point that there was a huge, tremendous opportunity for us to go in and start working particularly in this area. We saw this in a number of countries, and China is the first country that we started in. Now, what I want to say is that it's been really an interesting process for us, because we have walked into an area where people say, you can't do this, it's China. And yet we found that, you know what, it's like going into a dangerous situation where there's hostages or something. What do you do first? You say, okay, put down the guns and let's talk. Let's talk about how we can do it. A lot of people think, you got to be isolationist, leave them on the outside. And all the lawyers that we talked to said, no, don't leave us on the outside, because we're inside, and we have to deal with this. We want you to come in. We want you to figure out how to work with the government. What was fantastic for us is that the Chinese government, like many governments actually throughout the world who have now contacted us, said, yes, come in and we'll work together towards solutions. So we've started training models. We've started something called an advisement of rights campaign. These are like really easy things. And they had seen this on TV where in the States they stop you and the police say, you're arrested, but you have a right to this, this, and this. And they said, that's really cool. Let's start that in China. So in China, we started a advisement of rights campaign. Formerly, there's all these signs that say, resist. How much time do I have? 2 minutes, okay. It says, resist punishment, confess better treatment. But now in China, we've started these new poster campaigns which say you have a right to a lawyer, you have a right not to be tortured. And we started initially with 1,000 copies. We went to 10,000 copies, 360,000 copies, now over 500,000 copies, and it's now been translated into Tibetan, Mongolian, and Uyghur. We've gone into virtually not virtually, but we have hit every single province in China and have really been able to make some headway in moving forward. Now, what's exciting for us, too, is that we've trained 700 lawyers who are part of our community, and we've sat down with the Ministry of Justice, and they've said very clearly, listen, we've trained 700, and it'll probably take us another 10 years to train the rest. But we could use technology, and we could probably train 10,000 in the next year. So this is really our next platform and our next step for being able to scale up to the level we need to, and also connect lawyers to each other within China. The second thing, and I have 1 minute now, right, is that we have been very, very heartened, but sad at the same time. A number of countries have contacted us, and they've said, you know what, we have the exact same problem. Someone contacted me from Paraguay and said, there's not a family member here who either themselves have been tortured or they have a family member who has. So all these countries have come in and said, let's start this together. And we've done the same thing. The way that we're going to replicate is by building an International Defender Institute where we train fellows throughout the world and then have them, through technology, replicate the training and go out into their individual communities. Now I have half a minute, so I'll finish by saying that it's great to see you. Everyone is a change maker, and my last inspiration, which I hope you can take with you, is my friend Vishna, who was a 4-year-old boy when I met him in Cambodia. He had been born in a prison, and because he was born in the prison, everybody loved him, including all the guards. And they let him actually slip in and out of the bars because they knew him since birth. But by the time I met him, his head was growing bigger and he was getting bigger. So he would climb to the first, the second, the third, and put his little body through the bars, and then turn his head slowly, and then slip out the other side. Anyway, every day he would come meet me, and he would grab my little pinky, and he'd want me to take him to each of the prisoners. There were 156 at the time, so that he could stick his little finger through or look down and say hello. And for many of them, he was their greatest joy and greatest happiness. And really, for me, what I realized is that everybody, wherever we are, in some way, we can make a difference. And I thank you for all being here and making that difference with us today. Thank you.
When you think about everyone a change maker, just think about the impact at the local level of Karen's work and of all the entrepreneurs. She can't succeed unless she gets, in community after community, province after province, people to stand up and take her ideas and run with it, which is, no entrepreneur can succeed unless they make that happen. So she is recruiting local change makers in legal aid organizations and elsewhere all across the country. And that's what every entrepreneur does. You can't succeed unless you get in hosts of communities people to stand up. Those people in turn become role models. And some of them will become leading entrepreneurs later. And the more you have entrepreneurs like Karen, and the more we link them together, the rate of the disruption of the existing system and the rate of encouraging new people, the plowing and seeding, just accelerates and accelerates. And that's really, I think, the core dynamic at work. So now let me then introduce Victoria Hale, who represents yet another new frontier for us. She is a senior fellow, already long established before we got underway, but with tremendous amounts to contribute to the fellowship. And she is right at the business social frontier. And what happened historically is business became entrepreneurial and competitive. The social half fell way behind, low salaries, low performance, and now we're closing that gap. And Victoria is very much a part of that.
Thank you, Bill and Larry and everyone for coming to listen, and I hope to be inspired. That's what I'd like to ask you to be open to as these two beautiful women and myself speak to you. I founded the Institute for One World Health, a non-for-profit pharmaceutical company, despite what all of my friends said, which was, that will never work. And it wouldn't have worked if they had tried it, because they believed that it wouldn't work. And so much of what we do comes from deep inside, and a passion and an unwavering commitment and a stubbornness and a perseverance to not stop until it's done. So why a not-for-profit pharmaceutical company? I'm a pharmaceutical scientist, and proud to say so. I'm proud of my industry. Some days I love the pharmaceutical industry, and some days not. The problem was, many days I also felt ashamed of my industry, of my profession. It was that balancing that I couldn't reconcile, pride and shame. What was I going to do about it? Why did it exist? How could I define it better so that I understood it? The beauty of a profitable sector like the pharmaceutical industry is that it is profitable. It is a problem, and it creates opportunities. Blockbuster drugs are a great thing for people who want to take those medicines, but that means that diseases of poor people, diseases that affect small numbers of people, are out of the portfolio. They're off the table, they're not even in the room, they're not even in the building anymore. They're not considered. So global infectious diseases, for instance, have been neglected for a long time by my industry, by the pharmaceutical industry. Malaria, tuberculosis, diarrhea, you could go on and on. The flip side of the problem of not developing new medicines for infectious diseases is that companies are putting lots and lots of money into R&D for these new blockbuster diseases, right? Well, let's see this as an opportunity and work with industry and take that R&D, those discoveries that are made and cannot all be pursued because there are so many of them, and bring them forth and apply them to problems in the developing world. See them as opportunities. So we did this with one drug. We have a few programs running now, but our first drug is for Kala Azar, black fever, or visceral leishmaniasis. We're working in Bihar, India. We've heard about Bihar today. Every Indian and Indo-American friend that I had said, anywhere but Bihar, do not work in Bihar. But we did it because this is where the disease is the worst. Bihar has been wonderful, but we've had lots of Indian friends smoothing the path for us so that we could work effectively and prove that what we were doing would benefit the poorest of the poor. We chose an old medicine because we knew it was very safe. It was an old medicine that was no longer manufactured. It was an antibiotic that had been on the market for 25 years. And then oral products, it's injectable, came along that did just as good of a job. So just around the time that the pharmaceutical manufacturers stopped making this product, there were two little publications in the biomedical literature that said the drug worked. in a particular parasitic disease, Kala-Azar. They were both laboratory studies in mice and then in lab systems. But suddenly there was no drug to pursue to see if the drug would be effective in people, to see if the drug would cure this forgotten disease in people. So we put together a program and chose this product and this disease. And what's the greatest impact you can have as a pharmaceutical scientist, as an industry, as an R&D scientist or engineer? It's to produce a product that impacts a large number of people, right? That's what Google is all about. It's the same in the pharmaceutical industry. So to produce a drug and get it to people and have it be through a different model, a model that doesn't require that there be profits. It was a large experiment, and we're almost finished. In 3 weeks, we will submit all of our documentation to the FDA of India, the Drug Controller General. It's a very exciting time. I have to say, we hope the drug is approved. We don't know that it will be. We anticipate and hope strongly. There's a spectrum of social entrepreneurs, and I'll wrap up with 2 comments about Ashoka. Bill commented that I am very much on the business end as an industry scientist coming out of industry to develop a social enterprise. We have had tremendous success, and we have wonderful partnerships that we're building with any pharmaceutical company you can name, which is incredible. I won't tell you the words that were first used by these companies to describe this nonprofit pharmaceutical company. It's a dream come true. But we're still very much at one end. We're still very much at the corporate end. How do you get your product to the people who are at the last mile, who live beyond the farthest reaches? Well, that's not something any pharmaceutical company in the world, any vaccine company in the world has figured out how to do. Coca-Cola doesn't even reach the people who have Kala-Azar. So we need a different way of doing it. We need, I believe, social entrepreneurs. And it is through the network of Ashoka Fellows, 1,700 and growing daily, that we anticipate our impact will be manifested and felt. We can do all the great science we want. We can have all the partnerships that we want. There will be a technology backup if the product doesn't go far and reach the farthest rim of the earth. One more point about Ashoka, and it is the point regarding inspiration and being inspired and feeling something inside of yourself. I don't want you to resign today to go and start something that you're thinking about, but don't wait too long. If you are inspired, if you are passionate, if you do feel that grip, if you do wake up at night agitated, do what you need to do. And the time will come. The right time will come. You will know. Be quiet and listen and turn inside. The Ashoka Foundation and Bill are incredibly potent right now in terms of viewing the multiplication that needs to happen and that will happen of social entrepreneurs around the world, and the change that will happen because of that. So if a few of you in the room one day say, I'm going to try it, I'm going to go for it, then we can all feel pleased that we interacted today. So be inspired, and I look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
I just think about both these stories. The work is very important, but think about the methodology. Karen has found a way of dealing with some of the most insecure totalitarian governments. As she said, put the guns down and figure out how to deal with them. This does not make it easy. We have another colleague who is doing the same thing with health, with the same countries, and also into Africa. And it's the same insight. You know, you think about what Victoria's doing. This is a major change in this industry, but it's also a major change in a whole series of methodologies. How do you market out beyond Coca-Cola? Who would ask that question except an entrepreneur? Now, I now want to introduce the last person here, who is a colleague, Valeria Budinich, grew up in Chile, engineer, several decades of working with small producers, master of that area, absolutely one of the smartest people I've ever met, and she is responsible for leading our work on full economic citizenship. This is another large mosaic of 400 fellows whose purpose it is to try and make sure that everyone can play in the economy equally. And she is upsetting a number of industries.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Larry, and thank you to all of you for being here. With respect to full economic citizenship, before taking you through what it means for us at Ashoka, let me share a little anecdote. 2 years ago, when we were looking for a name for this initiative, we went to the Google search and actually typed full economic citizenship. And much to our surprise, what we got back, it was tax havens in the Caribbean. Now, I checked that recently, and the first thing that comes out is our initiative, so we must be doing something good. If you look at the work of the social entrepreneurs more closely, you will see that in many ways, the gap between the business and the social sector is disappearing through the work of both of them. I mean, through the work of all of them. And that is changing the roles not only of the social entrepreneurs, but it's also changing the roles of business. And through the full economic citizenship initiative, what we're doing is developing new business models that allow businesses to become key agents in delivering social change, and at the same time, helping social entrepreneurs to have access to the resources that they need and the infrastructure that they need in order to have significant impact. Now, the kind of impact that we are aiming at is very, it's almost scary to say it. It's actually to reach the 2/3 of the world population. Is to change forever the way the business and the social sector relate to one another, and how access to products and services is made possible for that 2/3 of the world that is basically living with less than $2 a day. Now, how are we doing it? Let me take you through one example, and let's quickly move to Mexico. And there we are working with a group of social entrepreneurs, is working with the leading company in Latin America delivering water distribution solutions to small farmers, and also for irrigation, but also for human consumption. To test this hybrid, this business social value chain that we are building, we are basically focusing first on irrigation. And why irrigation? Because the numbers are so evident that it makes you wonder why 2 million farmers in Mexico are not having access to irrigation solutions. The technology exists. The farmers are demonstrating that they can pay with one extra harvest for that access to irrigation technologies that would allow them to double or triple their income in less than a year. But for some reason, companies are still saying, like most traditional businesses, no, they cannot afford it, no, they cannot pay it, or simply, my business model is not suitable to deliver this kind of solutions, meaning it's not profitable, it's not cost effective to deliver these irrigation solutions to farmers. Now, what have we done? We're basically with a group of pioneer Ashoka fellows there. We have built a mosaic of solutions, a business model that is basically built on the work of an Ashoka fellow who is the leading person in a network, a federation of farmers of small cooperatives. We have brought Arturo together with Juan Jose, who is a leading environmentalist in Mexico. And now we are adding the financial dimension by bringing Isabel Cruz, who is the leading person working in Mexico on remittances and rural credit. The three of them are contributing with their innovations to create a new distribution channel, one that provides an integrated solution that basically for the company is allowing them to develop a new market that could represent in the order of $200 million a year in Mexico alone. If recently we calculated that with a McKinsey team, the potential in Brazil, and the number that the McKinsey consultants came up with was $500 million a year market. But why is not materializing? It's basically not materializing because our mindset is one equivalent to traditional businesses before companies like Google existed or internet existed. And basically it requires a new kind of, first of all, a new kind of mindset to be convinced and determined to make it happen. And to make it happen, you also need to bring the richness of different types of social innovations and work with pioneering businesses that would be willing to go the extra mile, that would be willing to make, in the case of water, we're talking about minor modifications. What the social entrepreneurs are doing is aggregating the demand that the small farmers represent. That demand aggregation implies that the company still would continue dealing with 100, 200 hectares at a time, not 1 or half a hectare or 2 hectares as most of these 2 million farmers have in Mexico. And at the same time, the company is not going to have to provide any credit to them directly. That credit is being brokered by the social entrepreneurs. And the social entrepreneurs serve basically as a web of non-digital type of relationship at the grassroots level that enable this market. The whole point of doing this is that, when you look at this intervention, it's not just demonstrating it with small-scale irrigation in Mexico. It's to basically taking it globally to every country where this is actually an opportunity that combined is several $billion for companies. But beyond that, behind this hybrid value chain concept, what you have is a type of business model that, as I said initially, could transform businesses and citizen sector organizations in fields that transcend the application to water. We are also working with a cement company, Cemex in Mexico, that already has 120,000 clients that saving $10 a week are basically being able to build 1 room at a time over a period of 70 weeks. It takes them 3 times less time than normally takes, and at the same time, they save in the order of 35% of the total cost of the home. But for the company, it implies to stop and think that they were not selling cement. They were actually, and these are the words of the company, they are helping communities and families to fulfill their aspirations of a better home. And the conversation totally changed from cement to actually making the dream of every family possible. Now, the social entrepreneurs there, what they are doing, just like in the case of water, is aggregating demand and facilitating the spread through their social networks. These models, now that we have piloted them in Mexico, next year we're taking them to Brazil and also India. And the idea is to unleash a change that then could be led jointly by businesses and social sectors beyond Ashoka. It's basically enable a whole new way of doing business and serving low-income people.